Welcome back, Truth Seeker. It is November 22nd, 2025, the 62nd anniversary of the JFK assassination. I want to talk about it, and I want to talk about it in regards to the Bush family and bring that all the way up to the present, Donald Trump, the current president, the first Republican president since George W. Bush, who was the first Republican president since his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, and of course, the later Bush and Donald Trump, growing up in roughly the same area of the country, New York City, Connecticut, in 1946 when they were both born, along with Bill Clinton, whose mother married into the Clinton political dynasty out of New York. But as we go through this, of course, we'll be talking about the Kabbalistic practice of coding numbers into words. Again, it's an elementary thing to learn, yet very profound once you learn it. The JFK assassination, for example, you take the most simple cipher of the English language. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, up to Z is 26. JFK assassination equates to 187. There's something known as Sumerian gematria, where we just multiply the alphabetic order times 6. So A is 6, B is 12, C is 18, D is 24, so on. JFK assassination equates to 1122. And of course, the JFK assassination happened on the 11th month, 22nd day, November 22nd, while the country was 187 years old. And that 187 is a very special number to some prominent secret societies. Uh, Ancient and accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry equals 187. Keep in mind, Freemasonry is based in the Torah, which is 187 chapters long. Society of Jesus equates to 187. That's the Jesuit order. The Jesuits have a lot to do with modern Freemasonry. It goes with Washington, D.C., being where the Jesuits set up camp. And again, the first Jesuit university, Georgetown, established in 1789, the year you got the first recognized U.S. president, the Freemason George Washington. And Gematria, George Washington equals 187, like Washington, D.C. does. Very special number is 187, but it was JFK who, again, was killed in the 187th year of the nation's existence, with George Herbert Walker Bush waking up in Dallas that very same morning. And again, we're going to cover a lot of little pieces here, but just wanted to start with this Gematria introduction. Gematria, the practice of coding numbers into words, which comes from Kabbalah, which is what Freemasonry is based in. Again, Kabbalah is traditionally a Jewish practice. If you look into the Society of Jesus, several of the original founding members were Jews who converted to Catholicism. All of this stuff fits together if you follow the historical timeline. And then you think about the Jesuits who served the Catholic Church, how Catholic churches tend to have the nicest structures in almost every town you'll go into in America. The Masons historically were the builders with the skills. But yeah, in terms of JFK, he did give that speech to the Newspaper Publishers of America organization about the problem with secret societies and secrecy, only to end up being shot in Dealey Plaza, named after a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason who made his money in the newspaper business. It's a fact that a lot of people overlook. The irony, if you think that's what it is, or the coincidence, if you think that's what it is, of him giving that specific speech to newspaper men and then dying where he did the day he did. Keep in mind, he was the 35th president. Catholic equals 35, the nation's first Catholic president. And Dealey Plaza, where he's killed, is right off I-35. Dealey Plaza is the off-ramp and on-ramp to I-35 for people who don't know that, which runs from Dallas to Oklahoma City. So, again, this little gematria piece, that little coincidence, which it certainly is not, but many would like for you to believe, it makes me want to go down a historical line here. So, this week that we talk about this, 4 days ago on November 18th, the 322nd day of the year, old 322, you had the leader of Saudi Arabia, the only country named after a family, at the White House. And it's a reminder, the Bush crime family and the House of Saud, the royal family that runs Saudi Arabia, they've been business partners for many decades. Many decades. Again, the father of George Herbert Walker Bush, Prescott Bush, he made a lot of money in World War II selling to the American military as well as the Nazis. Got very involved in oil and the automotive industry, which obviously his son carried on the legacy. Is both of his son and his grandson being big in the oil business. But think about Trump, the current president, who again was born in 1946, the same year as George W. Bush. Again, George W. is in New Haven, Connecticut, not far from New York City, a short drive. But Trump now, like the Bushes once did, again, the last Republican president before Trump was George W. Bush, and before that it was his father, George Herbert Walker Bush. When these guys are in office, catastrophe comes from 9/11 to Cooties 19. Don't forget the 19 hijackers and 9/11, Cooties 19 years later. And don't forget, we told you 5 years before 2020 why they were going to have another big 19 ritual lined up. We'll get more into that. But yeah, the Bush family, they're in Skull and Bones, aka Order 322. And out of all days for Trump to have the leader of Saudi Arabia at the White House the 322nd day of the year. And you can see all the gold ornamentation behind them. If you don't know this about the Saudi family, everywhere they travel, they have the structures they stay in. Say they're going to a hotel in America, they will have the rooms that they're going to stay in upgraded. They'll have gold installed in the walls. They'll have gold put around the mirrors, the faucets, the toilet, the light switches. Everywhere this family goes, they adorn things in gold. And of course, Trump said, here we are in the golden era. Trump's 79 years old right now, like gold's the 79th element on the periodic table. Again, the dollar's doing terrible right now, which is why gold is way up. Just like in 1979, the dollar did awful and gold quadrupled in value that year. These things aren't an accident. They're evidence of the cabal and how they work by this code of numbers and dates. Again, masonry is based in Kabbalah. The Masons etch on the temple, all is number. What's the first degree of Freemasonry? The apprentice, or the full title is the entered apprentice. So, Trump carried on the Bush legacy, meeting with the Saudi royals by the numbers. And again, Skull and Bones, Order 322. Of all days in the year, he had to do it at the White House on the 322nd day of the year. And, of course, George Herbert Walker Bush and George Walker Bush met with the Bush or the Saudis many a times. The author, Mr. Unger, wrote the book House of Saud, House of Bush. I might be getting the title wrong, but big book that came out in the early 2000s, actually somewhere back on my shelf. Let's look at this, you guys. Let's make sense of what's really going on in this country and in the world. Remember, Papa Bush, he did give the speech about a new world order, a world free or a tear, September 11th, 1990, 11 years to the day of the big attack on the 11th, where the structures came down that looked like an 11 in New York, the 11th state, where it all popped off with Flight AA-11, when consider Papa Bush was also once the head of the CIA and the 11th director of the CIA. And they do call him Poppy Bush because he has a lot to do with those poppy plants and the addictive drugs that they're made into. A lot of them came into the country after Vietnam, after JFK was assassinated. And George H.W. Bush woke up in Dallas the day of the assassination. The day of 9/11, Poppy Bush was meeting with the Bin Laden family and the rest of the Carlyle group just blocks from Manhattan where the World Trade Centers came down. If you don't know these things, you should look them up because they're all facts. This family just so close to all these tragedies. Again, Vietnam brought a lot of opioids into the country. The Bush crime family profited tremendously because they're part of it. That's been written about by many independent journalists. After 9/11, we went in and killed the Taliban and brought back poppy production in a major way in Afghanistan, the biggest poppy producing nation in the world. It has been for thousands of years because of the climate, the terrain, everything about it. Since that happened, major opioid crisis across the world. Anyway, let's go back and look at how this all aligns so perfectly because, uh, JFK 9/11, two of the biggest conspiracy theories of all time. And the Bush family just right there, so close to both of them. The Bush family that are in bed with the Saudi royal family. So look at this. King Fahd, the ruler of Saudi Arabia when 9/11 happened. He was installed June 13th, 1982. That's one day after George Herbert Walker Bush's June 12th birthday, and that's when he was the vice president. He went from CIA director to vice president to president. To Bill Clinton, who also went to Yale and was probably in Skull and Bones, to then his son as president. But notice, and what else is funny is the day that he died was the day that the prince in his command, it was his birthday. So the prince took over the country on his birthday when the father died. But anyway, do you see how Fahd, as in King Fahd, equals 19? And remember, they told us there were 19 hijackers on 9/11. From 82 to 2001, how many years is that? Is that 19 years? It sure is. And remember what happened in 1982 under Reagan and Bush. And of course, it was Bush that was really running the country. Who do you guys think was really running the country? The Hollywood actor Ronald Reagan or the guy whose father was one of the most powerful senators in U.S. history, Prescott Bush, and who was also the head of the CIA before going into the Oval Office? Which one do you think was really running things? The Hollywood actor Ronald Reagan, who ran on MAGA like Trump, who's also a Hollywood actor like Trump, or, again, Mr. Middle of the Bush crime family? Which one do you think it was? But anyway, in 1982, when Reagan and Bush were in office, the war on drugs was officially declared. And the rules were written so that poor people were punished the most, and especially darker complected people. Just think about this, just how this all fits together. Drugs, 19-year cycles. 1982 was 19 years before 2001. 2001 was 19 years before 2020 with Cootie's 19. And didn't that have a lot to do with drugs or what we would call big pharma? Of course it did. All of these things are 1,000,000% related. Why do they operate on a scale of 19 years? Because that is the cycle of the moon. Every 19 years, it appears in the same spot in the sky that it was 19 years earlier. January 1st, we'll just say this year, 2025, where the moon was January 1st, 2025, it's going to be in the same spot January 1st, 2044, 19 years later. But okay, King Fahd, 19, right? So he'd been the king 19 years when the 19 hijackers, 15 of which were from Saudi Arabia, supposedly attacked the U.S. And get a load of this. From his birthday to the attack was 179 days, which is the 41st prime. King equals 41. You know, in your rigged National Basketball Association, we just had the day leaving 41 days left in the year 2 days ago. The Kings got blown out by 41 points. When Kobe Bryant died at 41, King James won the finals exactly 41 weeks after his birthday on Father-Daughter Day after Kobe and his daughter died at 41. If you haven't read my book from 2017, it covers a lot of this information, even a chapter in there on how Kobe's whole career was defined by 41. That came out 3 years before he died at 41. But anyway, King 41, Saudi Arabia 41. If you're new here, King equals 41 when you take the alphabetic order. A is 1 up to Z is 26. So K is the 11th letter, I is the 9th, N's the 14th, G's the 7th. Saudi Arabia equates to 41 when you take the alphabetic order with numerology applied to each letter. So for example, the first letter in Saudi Arabia is S, the 19th letter. But what is the numerology of 19? It is 1 plus 9 is 10. 10 is 1 plus 0 is 1. A is the first letter. U's the 21st letter. 2 plus 1 is 3. D's the 4th letter. I's the 9th, so on. Saudi Arabia, 41. Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda came about as something funded by the CIA to interfere with the Soviet Union being in Afghanistan. This also has to do with why the Soviet Union, that's now Russia, how Israel's 9/11 happened on Putin's birthday, October 7th, which was the anniversary of us invading Afghanistan after 9/11. On 10/7, after 9/11 happened on the 107th day of Rudy Giuliani's age, who was the 107th mayor, not to mention military equals 107, and it factors in with the World Series. being the 107th, just right after 9/11, where the Yankees lost. It was a downer for New York, just like 9/11 itself. But yes, USA also 41, and keep in mind 41's the 13th prime number, like USA is the land of 13 stripes, started with 13 colonies, sends its kids to school for 13 years where they get indoctrinated and essentially become useful idiots. Notice Skull and Bones also equals 41. Again, George H.W. Bush was the 41st president. If you go to Yale, they have a plaque up about the 41 secret societies on campus, the most famous of which is Skull and Bones. And don't forget the movie about Skull and Bones, The Skulls, came out right before George W. Bush was elected president. Paul Walker starred in that. He gets a red Porsche in the movie. He died in a strange way in a red Porsche. And he died on November 30th. 11 plus 30, 41, 5 years to the day of George Herbert Walker Bush, the 41st president, dying on that day. And don't forget who told you before it happened why he would not live past that day and he would not live past age 94. By the way, September 11th, 2001 was a date with 41 numerology. And the prince who was under the king, who eventually became the king, notice from his August 1st birthday to September 11th was 41 days later. And because the king was ill at the time, they said the prince was actually in control of the country. So the man who was actually in control, it was 41 days after his birthday. The man who was still recognized as the king, again, it was 179 days from his birthday, the 41st prime. Think about how perfect that is. How could it not be this perfect if it wasn't planned? And I want to remind people, the 4 base ciphers of the English language, alphabetic order, reverse alphabetic order, both orders with numerology applied. Terror equals 94, just like World Trade Center. They opened on the 94th day of the year, April 4th, 1973. The anniversary of William Henry Harrison's death. And it goes with George H.W. Bush being in the town named after President Tyler, who replaced William Henry Harrison the day JFK died. The 44th term president, not to mention that was the anniversary of the MLK assassination in 68. But notice, terror is also 40. And remember, Reagan was the president when the Saudi leader was installed as the head of the country, while George H.W. Bush was the vice president. And don't forget how the Iranian hostage crisis ended after 444 days on the day that Reagan, the Hollywood actor, took office. That was with Iran, a nation overthrown by the CIA in the 50s, along with British Petroleum. And here comes the vice president, the CIA guy who's big in the oil business. Just like his father. The day he strolls into office, all of this just happens. Again, if you can't see all of this stuff is a rigged joke, it's because you're choosing not to see. Terror, when you run the alphabetic order in reverse, terror equals 68. Prescott Bush equals 68. 9/11 happened on the 68th day of George W. Bush's age, who was not elected president by the people of the United States, but by the Supreme Court, where key deciders on the Supreme Court were appointed and installed by George Herbert Walker Bush. Remember, Jeb Bush was the 43rd governor of Florida. First, Florida was called for Gore. Then they said, oh, no, it's actually for Bush. And then they issued a recount, which the Supreme Court stopped, which made George W. Bush the president. Think about it. If he's not president, how did they pull off the ritual? On the 68th day of George W. Bush's age, the towers came down. Keep in mind, in 1968, George W. Bush graduated from Yale Skull and Bones and Order 322. That was the same year 911 was made the National Emergency Dialing Code. The same year World Trade Center construction began in New York. The same year 2001 A Space Odyssey came out. The same year Boeing debuted their jumbo jetliners. The founder of Boeing went to Yale as well. The same year the New York Jets won their only Super Bowl, just like how after 9/11 you had the Patriot Act, and then all of a sudden the Patriots were the greatest football team ever. You know, this year, you guys, 2025, Drake May, the current quarterback of the Patriots, he became 9-11 as a starter on the anniversary of the Patriot Act. You think that's a coincidence? If you do, you're dumb. The Patriots just became 9-2 versus the Jets this year. Jets equals 9. Manhattan equals 92. Just think about it. This is all mockery. The National Fixed League, which is the NFL, is the Roman Coliseum, which distracts the dopes. and keeps them from thinking about things they should be thinking about, like how they're being lied to and manipulated by their government every day. The only place Americans gather is to watch these rigged sports or go to some other entertainment venue like a concert. They never gather to stand up for their rights and liberties because they're content, they're pacified. CIA is big in show business as well. But yeah, about 68, just so many things. Keep in mind, CIA equals 68 in that same cipher. And then in reverse, terror is also 41, like how it happened on 41 date numerology, like how 15 of the 19 hijackers were said to be from Saudi Arabia, like how it lined up with the king and the prince ever so perfectly in the USA with these Skull and Bones members at the head. Don't forget, Herbert Walker was also the 43rd vice president. Yale equals 43, like his son became the 43rd president, like Jeb was the 43rd governor of Florida. Keep in mind, Florida also equals 43. The election came down to Florida. Tom Brady went to Florida at age 43 and became the first quarterback to win a Super Bowl in his own building. More ha-ha mockery, all part of the connected rig script. But okay, next piece. The king. He became the king in 82 in Saudi Arabia, the day after George H.W. Bush's 58th birthday, right? And just to read this little thing here about George H.W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, the son of Prescott Bush, a senator from Connecticut, was born in Milton, Massachusetts on June 12, 1924. On his 18th birthday, he enlisted in the armed forces, becoming the country's youngest commissioned pilot. During the Second World War, he served on 58 missions. 58 missions is what they tell us. Do you think that's true, or do you think that's just more reporting by the numbers? Bush, 58. George W. Bush, 58. What is 58? It's the 41st composite number. So you see how this fits together? How the day after his 58th birthday, you get the new king in Saudi Arabia, where all these years later, 19 years later, the towers come down, blamed on 19 hijackers. You see? And Craig Unger, he is who wrote the book House of Bush, House of Saud. Yeah, I read that one years ago. Isn't it interesting how his name's also 58? I want to say that's a synchronicity. If you actually listen to Craig Unger and his interviews, I find him to be an authentic person. But I do find it quite interesting that his name's also 58. He wrote the book saying that everything going on in 2001 and then the years after in the time of George W., you could trace it all back to the long-standing relationship with the Bush family and the royal family of Saudi Arabia and all the shenanigans they'd been pulling along with what was going on in Iran, a country overthrown by the CIA. When people come along and say things like, oh, I already knew about Bush and Saudi Arabia, so what do I need to know this for? It's like, well, what do you mean, what don't you need to know this additional information for? Did you know how coordinated and planned all of this was? Did you know how ritualistic all of this was? I always get confused when people think that they just want to limit themselves on information. You know? It's like if you came to a restaurant and asked for a plate of food and you expected a burger and fries, and I gave you a little tiny sliver of the bun and maybe a speck of beef with a drop of ketchup on there and a quarter of one French fry and put it on the plate. And you're like, well, hey, I ordered a burger and fries. And I said, well, listen, man, I gave you part of a burger and I gave you fries. I saw your attitude before. You thought just having a little bit of information was the same as having the whole thing. So what's the deal here today? You'd get that. It's really the same thing if you think about it. But I see this mindset all the time. I already knew about their ties, so like, what's this do? Shows how perfectly planned it all was. That's what it does. Something you couldn't do before. Now, just to go back to the appointment of George Herbert Walker Bush as the head of the CIA, January 30th, 76, after 13 years of being involved at the CIA, and keep in mind, CIA equals 13 as well. Remember all those 41s? 41's the 13th prime number. Notice that it was 76, right? Look at the Gematria Skull and Bones. 149, okay? Again, JFK was the 149 is the 35th prime. JFK, the 35th president, born on May 29th, the 149th day of the year. George H.W. Bush woke up in Dallas that morning and departed for Tyler, Texas, is the story. He wasn't at Dealey Plaza. Some people say he was seen there. The family story is, no, I went to Tyler, Texas that day. I'd left just hours before it happened. Again, he wasn't far away, just like the day of 9/11. He's meeting with literally the bin Laden family and the rest of the Carlyle group blocks from the World Trade Centers. Stones throw away from the World Trade Centers. The Bush family and the bin Laden family, and the bin Ladens are powerful in Saudi Arabia and Iran. They just happen to be at the same table as the towers come down. What are both families invested in? The military-industrial complex, which, by the way, equals 322, and oil. So shared interests. Remember, the bin Ladens were the only ones who could fly in America after 9/11. Mockery, just the way we've been mocked. But okay, Skull and Bones, also 41, like he was the 41st president. 202, that's the DC area code, but it's also the day leaving, or his birthday, June 12th, is the day leaving 202 days left in the year. And keep in mind, the king was installed on June 13th, the day leaving 201 days left in the year. Skull and Bones does equal 201 as well if you use the Francis Bacon cipher. Just like how the Skulls movie came out 201 days after Paul Walker's birthday, or on the 202nd day of his age. 2 towers became 0 before they became 1 World Trade Center. But 202, 76, that was the year he was appointed the head of the CIA. And what day is his son's birthday? His son's birthday is July 6th. Remember, the Georgia Guidestones came down on George W. Bush's 76th birthday on July 6th, and they were unveiled on March 22nd, 322, like Skull and Bones' order 322. Also interesting, if you look at a clock in the morning, 3:22 a.m., like during the witching hour, that is the 202nd minute of the day. I've always found that interesting. But yeah, there's Shrub, born on 7/6, the same year as Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump was born June 14th, 46. Just days before Bush. And then just days after him, Bill Clinton was born on August 19th, 46. They all grew up in the same area, New York City, Connecticut area. Notice that from the day that Gerald Ford became president to the day that he made George Herbert Walker Bush the head of the CIA was exactly 77 weeks. Remember, let's pull up the base ciphers here. World Trade Center has that 77. If you're new here, they came down 185 days after bin Laden's birthday. His birthday was March 10th, kind of like 10-3, like Pan Am 103, associated with Islamic terrorism. Pan Am Airlines was founded by a Skull and Bones member as well. All the planes on 9/11 were Boeing, founded by a man who was in one of the secret societies at Yale. World Trade Center 77, just like if you spell out September 11th, it's 77. And coming back, World Trade Center 247. The head of the CIA when it happened was George Tenet. He took office 247 weeks before 9/11 happened. To be exact, it was 247 weeks and 1 day before 9/11 happened. And World Trade Center, again, equals 94 like tear. They opened April 4th, 73, the 94th day of the year. And if you haven't read my book, 9/11 to Cooties Virus, they're perfectly coordinated events that share a lot of the same patterns. You can see the 94 in it, as well as also the 113, like the day it was declared. And remember, the city that had the first case outside of China was Bill Gates' city, the city with the biggest needle, King County, when Corona means crown. But Seattle, Washington, 94, and don't forget the World Trade Centers were designed by a Japanese-American from Seattle, Washington, and Magnuson Klemenkic Associates out of Seattle helped build the World Trade Center, and they were designed by a Japanese-American, and we had kamikaze pilots, and the Pentagon, construction began on it September 11th, 41, right before Pearl Harbor, when 9/11 was called the New Pearl Harbor, when George Bush's friends were a think tank that created something called the Project for a New American Century before they took office, and they called for a new Pearl Harbor because they wanted to go back into the Middle East. And again, when I see that, this is how for anyone who wonders how I evolved into understanding these numbers, listen, when I was 18, not long after when 9/11 happened, I learned about things like the Project for a New American Century, about the things that happened in 1968, and I would share that information with people. And they would just say, well, I don't know. It all sounds conspiratorial. Like, Yeah, it does. It does. Did you know a conspiracy is a real thing? So anyway, I've always been looking for more and more information to break through the glass in people's minds. It might be impossible for a lot of people because they are under a severe kind of mind control that's been installed from the authorities, from the education system, which is an indoctrination system, from the news, which is just really mass mind control and programming. But then again, some people have come across this information and said it took them out of the spell. And they are under a spell. You know, this Kabbalah, this stuff, it is all related to spell casting. This is how they cast the spells. Anyway, coming back from Gerald Ford taking office to George Herbert Walker Bush being installed as the head of the CIA, 77 weeks. Remember, United States also equals 77. September 11th changed the country forever. It's also 40, like, you know, Papa Bush was the VP to number 40. And DC's on the 77th meridian. We just saw the government reopen on November 12th this year, the 77th birthday of the Superior General. More mockery. Don't forget about Flight 77 that hit the Pentagon 77 minutes after taking off, 8:20 to 9:37 if you want to look it up. The building was 77 feet tall. And construction began on September 11th. Let's see if Google's AI is lying about these things. What day did construction begin on the Pentagon? Oh, good. It's not. September 11th, 41. Speaking of 41, you know what I mean? Speaking of 41. And ironically, or probably not, from the day he was installed to September 11th was 32 weeks and 2 days. Looks a bit like 322 to me. And remember what this Bush family is. This is a family that made its wealth and became as powerful as it was by working with Nazi Germany. And, you know, this time Trump gets in there and you got Elon Musk doing the salute in tribute to Werner von Braun, like I told you the day of, January 20th. And Project Paperclip began on the 201st day of the year after the war, January 20th, the 201st day of the nation's age. I put out all that information about Werner von Braun and what Elon Musk did earlier this year. He deleted me from the Twitter platform for it. And then 2 weeks later, they put out the news that Werner von Braun's wife literally died the same day that Musk did that. For people who don't know, Werner von Braun was the Nazi scientist largely responsible for the moon landing on July 20th, which, by the way, that was the 24th anniversary of Project Paperclip beginning. See how Nazis, the plural is 24. A lot of Nazi scientists involved in the moon landing. Neil Alden Armstrong, 201, 201st day of the year, July 20th, 1969. 69 looks like the cancer symbol. Cancer's ruled by the moon. The moon landing in 69 in the time of cancer. Come on, man. Armstrong alone's 44 like cancer. Stop it. Space is 44. Stop. Anyway. Funny how you can just like, this knowledge, it just allows you to see through every last ritual. By the way, again, the Jesuit Order 177, 201, Order of Illuminati 201. The Jesuit Adam Weishaupt founded the Illuminati in Germany and Bavaria. He ended up dying 201 days after the anniversary of the Order's establishment on November 18th, the 322nd day of the year. Skull and Bones is modeled after the Illuminati. All these things fit together, but I do bring up the 177 because if you measure from JFK's birthday, May 29th, 1963, to the day he died, 177 days later. You know what I mean? But yeah, this is who this family is. This family is connected to all of the most evil stuff that has happened in recent history. And they've put 2 members in the Oval Office. By the way, Prescott Bush did die at age 77. I won't even talk about him dying in 72 or the day he died on. From Columbus, only to become also powerful in the District of Columbia. But yeah, this is who this family is. They are connected to every horrible thing going on. And meanwhile, we live in a country where you show people this stuff, and then they say things back to you like, it all sounds like a bunch of conspiracy theory to me. Is there something wrong with you? Do you think you might be schizophrenic? It's like, whoa. Because I'm showing you all this stuff this family's connected to. I have the problem? And that's where you see that these people are under a spell. They think being dumb and ignorant and automatically dismissing something without looking into it and then labeling you something they don't even understand, they think that's normal. They think that's right. And for everyone out there crying because you can see the writings on the wall that they're going to replace humanity with robots and AI, is it not deserved, you guys? I mean, let's be honest. Is it not deserved? I think it's deserved. I didn't grow up in any different conditions than these other people. I just chose to see through things and look into things and question authority, something my peers hardly ever did. Since the time I was a child, I've seen the same thing. A bunch of dumb losers, a bunch of dumb, cowardly people, a bunch of weak, pathetic people. And if you haven't seen it, maybe you've been one of them. Maybe you're just now waking up and just starting to see it for the first time, but that's what it's been my whole lifetime. I think these people deserve to get wiped out. And yeah, I don't like that I'll probably be going down with them, but I understand why things are the way they are. It's because people didn't rise to the occasion. Said they acted like a bunch of pathetic losers. And by the way, you know, this little troll plant, and just like all the puppets in DC, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's associated with conspiracy theory, a term that became very popular after the JFK assassination. And by the way, look into it. The first ever publishing of the word conspiracy theory was in the New York Times, always controlled by Jesuits, in 1863. Isn't that interesting? 100 years to the JFK assassination, where the term became very popular. But think about it. Last night, on the eve of the JFK assassination anniversary, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the conspiracy theorist, announces her resignation. And the thing is, she represents Georgia, right? And this year's the 62nd anniversary. Georgia's 62. It's also 44, like JFK was the 44th term president. Georgia's 44 and 37, like shooting. But again, as I mentioned, Friday, November 21st, when she did this, it was a date that had a numerology breaking down to 14 and 5. She represents the 14th district. She's been in office. It'll be 5 years officially in January when she resigns. Yesterday was the 325th day of the year. Where was JFK shot? Again, he was shot in Dealey Plaza, named after a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason. Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. 325. Do you see the 127 as well, like Georgia? Do you see how Ground Zero has that 127? Remember, buildings 1, 2, and 7 fell that day. Ground Zero terminology is the point above or below ground where an atomic, hydrogen, or nuclear bomb explodes. Terminology that came out of the Manhattan Project, like where the World Trade Centers were. Atomic bomb, 93 World Trade Center bombing. For the better part of the next year, they worked under the World Trade Centers in 93. You had Flight 93. You had Papa Bush leave office in 93. Bill Clinton, another Yale grad, come into office between the two Bush terms, who was connected to the New York political Clinton dynasty. Again, Clinton's biological father, Bill Blythe, died May 17th, 46. His mom married into the Clinton political dynasty. That just happened to happen days after he takes office. Hillary becomes a senator there. Bin Laden's father died September 3rd in a plane crash in history. Look it up. Bin Laden, yeah. Bin Laden, his father died on 9/3. His father died in 67, the year before the whole plan went into motion in 68. That was the year of the 6-Day War, where Israel put out the commemorative coin of a plane flying into what looks like two towers. If you don't know about it, look it up. These are all facts. What do you think really happened that turned those buildings to dust as they fell to the ground? By the way, Marjorie's been in office. She's in her 59th month right now as they do this thing with the conspiracy theorist Marjorie. Whoops, I need an F, not a K. She's been in office she's in her 59th month right now as they do this on the eve of the JFK assassination. I remember Joe Biden won the 59th election. I told you he would more than a year before it happened, becoming the 46th president exactly 46 weeks after the Pope's birthday. Hunter Biden, born on the 35th day of the year. JFK, killed in the time of Sagittarius the Hunter, number 35, killed on I-35 at age 46, right? And we'll come back to that too. But yeah, Marjorie last night resigning because of her beef with Trump. Notice it was 160 days after Trump's birthday, assassination 160. Remember what I told you the day that RFK filed his paperwork? He filed it April 5th, 2023 to run for the 2024 election. I said, well, look at that. Dealey Plaza equals 45, and Ambassador Hotel equals 45. That's where JFK was killed. and also where his father was killed. Excuse me, Ambassador Hotel is 54. April 5th, the day that RFK Jr. filed his paperwork, can be written 54 or 45. And Dealey Plaza is also 54, and they're all Jesuit educated, like Jesuit Orders 54. It's the other piece here. But I pointed out that not only did April 5th have that connection to where his father and his uncle died, he also filed the paperwork 144 days after the Superior General's birthday. And his father died at 1:44 a.m. RFK Jr. died June 6th, 1968 at 1:44 a.m. And notice Robert Kennedy equals 66, just like Sirhan. And JFK, he died a span of 144 days from meeting with the Pope on July 2nd. So why would RFK Jr. file his paperwork 144 days after the Superior General's birthday? You can still watch my video. It's still up. In that video, I said there will be assassinations on the campaign trail paying tribute to what happened to 68. And we've seen Charlie Kirk get it by the numbers. And, of course, the Trump hoax on July 13th paying tribute to Revelation 13 where the beast gets the head wound. Again, Trump runs on Mega, the highest degree of the Church of Satan. Don't forget, it was the 45th birthday of the Church of Satan, 45 days before Trump's birthday, where Obama told us that Trump would become number 45 at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That was April 30th, 2011. But yeah, you see all those numbers? Notice Ambassador Hotel also has the 153 in it. The Illuminati, what Skull and Bones is modeled after, has the 153 as well as the 63. The year JFK got it. The Charlie Kirk thing just happened 63 days before the Superior General's birthday. And then don't forget, the Superior General is the 31st Superior General. He was installed on October 14th, which was Charlie Kirk's birthday. Again, all of this stuff, all connected. But yeah, just coming back to George Herbert Walker Bush, who left Dallas the morning of the JFK assassination per his official story. They said he was about 95 miles away. And the Jesuits created counted the 95 Theses. The Jesuit Adam Weishaupt founded the Illuminati, died on the 322nd day of the year. Skull and Bones Order 322, modeled after the Illuminati. Anyway, notice how from Bush's birthday to the JFK assassination was 163 days. That's the 38th prime number. When Cronkite broke the news that JFK died, he said it was some 38 minutes ago. Of course, death equals 38. So does the word murder. So does the word killing. You can see murder by numbers. Got the 38 in the movie poster. Murder, 38. The song Murder by Numbers about killing being the sport of the elected came out in 83. The movie came out on Ignatius Loyola Day, the day he became the first recognized leader of the Jesuits by the Catholic Church, the first superior general. The movie came out 38 weeks after Sandra Bullock's birthday. Again, killing, death, murder, RIP. They're all 38, just like Gematria, like English, like Kabbalah, like Pentagon, like DC on the 38th parallel, like Hegseth being nominated on the Superior General's birthday and then being installed 38 days from the Pope's birthday to lead the Pentagon, the nation's killing department. But yeah, anyway, keep in mind, Skull and Bones is also known as the Brotherhood of Death. And remember how this did happen while the country was 187 years old? Brotherhood of Death, 187. Again, like I said, Washington, D.C. is 187. Society of Jesus is 187. Ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry is 187. George Washington is 187. George W. Bush, his birthday is July 6th, the 187th day of the year. George W. Bush, George Washington. George Washington died unexpectedly at age 67, like blood sacrifice is 67, like the sixth day of the seventh month. George W.'s birthday can be expressed that way. Don't forget, blood sacrifice 121 as well, like Richard Cheney, who died on the 121st day of Bush's age, a day after the 121st World Series. And he also died the day that number 46 was elected in history. Dick Cheney was the 46th vice president, who was the vice president before Joe Biden, and then they buried him on Joe Biden's birthday. Houston, Texas, 46, like Joe Biden, number 46, like him being the 46th vice president. Again, Thursday, 46. They buried him on a Thursday, the night of Thursday Night Football, as the Houston Texans picked up their 168th franchise win 168 days after the incorporation date. All these things are connected. They're all connected. It's undeniable. Josh Allen, the Wyoming product, stayed on 83 wins. Wyoming 83, Texans 83, football 83. It was 83 days from the founding date of Houston that they did that Thursday night football game. It was Joe Biden's 83rd birthday, like murders 83, like elections 83, like again, Dick Cheney died on the anniversary of him being elected. All of this stuff is one big sick joke, and that's why you can see that it's all being perfectly orchestrated by the people who actually control these sports leagues, these news stories, these political officials. It's all one sick, demented web tied together perfectly by this Kabbalistic code of letters and numbers. And in light of Bush saying that he was in Tyler, Texas, which, by the way, is where Patrick Mahomes is from, who they've already synced up a bunch of rituals with the president and the White House. Again, Patrick Mahomes played high school in White House, Texas, born in Tyler, Texas. His birthday is the same birthday as the NFL, September 17th, and the Constitution, September 17th. And don't forget for a minute that the NFL was founded 133 years to the day of the Constitution. Football 133, like government, like White House, like president, the kid who played in White House, Texas, now plays for the Chiefs. But yeah, anyway, notice how John Tyler, what Tyler, Texas is named after, where Bush was the day that JFK was shot, equals 46 and 44. How weird is that? Because JFK died at 46, Catholic 46, first Catholic, and he was the 44th term president. Execution 44 and 46. 163 days. Oh, snap, I didn't put the screenshot up here. George Bush, that's a missing detail. George Bush is 163. Oh, snap. George Bush is also 46. Huh. I overlooked that. Born in 46 was his son. Makes sense. But yeah, 163 days after Bush's birthday, Kennedy's dead. And consider that the Bush family and the Kennedy family are the two biggest political American dynasties ever. So think about that too. One's on the red side, the other's on the blue side. Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. It's almost like there's some kind of battle of power through the Kabbalistic code of numbers. And by the way, Prescott Bush, who left office that year as a senator, the assassination just happened to be 191 days after his birthday. Big in the oil business. Oil big in Texas. Anyway, I was going to do this in live stream form, but YouTube was crashing me out. So I will upload this as a video. Thank you to everyone who hits the like and the share. Thank you to everyone who supports the work. And until next time, Truth Seeker.